Om Shanti and a very good morning to everyone. Good morning, Om Shanti, Brother David.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you.
Yes, let me give you a brief introduction about yourself. Uh, Brother David doesn't require any introduction. Whoever has gone to Gyan Sarovar must have definitely met him. But let me introduce him briefly. Brother David Kilowsky is an Australian artist, musician, and long-term meditation practitioner for more than 40 years now. And he's been residing for nearly three decades now at the Brahma Kumaris spiritual headquarters in Mount Abu. And his work blends art and music as tools for meditation and spiritual transformation. Brother David creates reflective soundscapes using a variety of instruments, often used in meditation sessions to promote inner reflection and connection to the divine. As a visual artist, he specializes in airbrush canvases and digital designs of spiritual imagery, with his vibrant pieces displayed at Brahma Kumari centers worldwide. His contribution in both art and music have deeply impacted the global Brahma Kumaris community, helping spiritual aspirants enhance their meditation practice and inner connection. So that's Brother David for us. And he's here with us to share his learnings and his insights on the topic of the power of presence. So, welcome, Brother David. Over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Wonderful. Yes, it's always interesting, though, when we get an introduction of something of, especially when it's, we all have so different parts, and it's interesting how, we look at someone's part or think, okay, that soul's playing this part or that part, and of course, in the old paradigm, it's like, we say we give our introduction like this, but as we know as meditators, it's a part we play, but I'm actually different from that, So, and sometimes I think, this real aspect of presence, I use that probably more in a sense. We say soul consciousness, but in a true sense, it's really being fully present in the moment and really taking the maximum of that. And sometimes I think, you know, we don't have anything else but this moment, to do that, because we can sometimes think, okay, no, I'll do this tomorrow, or I'll do this after this time or something. But in a true sense, sometimes I think, wow, Baba gives so many indications that, on the aspect of like now or never, if you have the thought, put it into action. And sometimes I think, well, if I'm thinking a lot and having a lot of thoughts, how can I put that into action? Like in a sense, when it's like when we're really active, the mind's really active, thinking a lot and a lot of ideas, a lot of things, possibilities. But sometimes I think, well, when we get to a space where we're really focused, really still, um, and there's a lot of silence, then almost when a thought comes of something, it's easy to put that into action. It's like really strong, it's powerful, and think, yeah, like it's like an insight or a light goes on, and think, wow, yes, that's, and of course, that is always born out of silence. It never comes through thinking. We can't think that sort of into reality, because actually sometimes I think the thinking is actually the problem. Like a lot of thinking, a lot of thoughts, and it's almost like as we know, and a lot of us have probably heard that, if there's a problem that's created out of thinking, it can't be solved out of thinking either. It's almost like there's this silent space where we sit with Baba, we sit in that stillness, and of course then we get the touch. We can say we get the touching from Baba. We get, it's an insight or a feeling of, yes, in that space something is born. And of course, as we all know, as we all know too, soul consciousness in this aspect is the easiest, but it's also the most difficult, because it's always with us. And, as Baba's always said, this is a garland around our neck, this thing of Om Shanti, I'm a peaceful soul. But actually, how much do we really experience that? That's the thing. And we all know as well as meditators that if my world and my actions, my thoughts, words, and actions are in line in Baba's knowledge, it's like it's easy to have that state of being. If it's not, if there's some dramas or some karmic accounts, and my mind's thinking a lot about that and pulled to that person or that situation, of course, then that aspect of presence or soul consciousness is not there. And of course, then, as we all know, we go through these different situations where we learn through that experience. But of course, and then we become more clever, more smart. Then when those things come up, we realize, no, if I go into that, then it's going to create more thoughts, more thinking, and of course will pull us away from that state of presence. I remember one year, I think it was 2011, when that big earthquake hit Japan, and it spoiled a nuclear reactor, and of course many thousands of souls left the body in that tsunami. And I remember sort of at that time in Aviak Bapdada he had that series where he was conducting a drill, and this was in Diamond Hall. And I remember sort of the front row of the daddies and seniors of that time. They were chit chatting to Baba, about how long have we got? How long was before Vinash? How long are the rest of this Sangam Yug? And of course, as we know, Baba quite often in that type of question, he will always bring it back to ourselves. He'll bring it back to the children, saying, okay, are you ready? And of course, most of the time, in that sort of exchange, no one will say, they won't respond to that. There'll be silence, because it means, okay, am I ready? Am I ready for that time? And when Baba did this, it was like, I was listening and think, okay, Baba's not giving a date. He's not saying a date for this, but then he's saying, okay, are you ready? And I was thinking, well, what does it really mean to be ready? What is that state of being ready? And of course, sometimes he says also that, okay, your last thoughts will lead you to your destination. So obviously, very important that my thinking, my thoughts at that time. And of course, then when he conducted this drill, I had the experience of being so grounded, like in the present moment, like thinking, wow, like each moment is eternal, because we know the cycle is every moment it's repeating. Not that we experience that this is nothing new in that sense, but of course it's seemingly new. But in a true sense, it's like each moment is eternal. And when I say each moment, the feeling I had at that time was like, there's only this moment. To be in that space and thinking, wow, this is eternity. Wow. But then how to keep in this space or in this moment. And that was sort of like, I thought, wow, well, of course, if this is the only moment I ever have, this present moment, then that to me was like home base. And when I say home base, it's like, okay, we know when we sit in silence, there's no thinking, no thoughts, really in that really deep state, when we go for a length of time in this, it's like, well, that's soul world, in the sense of that deep silence and just that no thinking, no thoughts, just sitting in that space. And I'm thinking, well, that's home base. That's my home. That's Baba's home. But then how to maintain that? And of course, as we all know, it's almost like that is the game, like how can I sit in that space in remembrance of Baba, in that silence, in my home. And that's the ever ready space. Like that's, and if the soul's out of the body, there's no difference because you're already home in that sense, in that. And I was thinking, well, of course that's, and it was really like a space too that I thought, well, of course Baba cannot give a date for that. And in the sense, when I say a date for that, it means we're all going to leave the body in the present moment. It's impossible to leave the body in the future because it's always, it's that sort of, so it's always to think, wow, well, of course that you can't give a date for that. And sometimes Baba mentions this too, where he says, okay, death has no calendar, in a sense, when we say death, which is an illusion anyway, but it has no calendar because it doesn't exist. And when the soul does leave the body, of course, it's going to be in the present moment. The last breath is always going to be in the present moment for everyone. And of course, I was reflecting at that time on all those souls in Japan, because that was the news at that time. There was thousands that left the body. And I was thinking, wow, thinking of those souls then, that would have been, that was their vinash. That was their destruction, because, you know, whether they thought, no, this is only just Japan, that wouldn't be in the awareness. It would just be, this is destruction, you know. So, and I was thinking, wow. And of course, then I think, well, yes, that's easier said than done, to be really grounded for a length of time in the present moment in that state of silence. And of course, we have lots of programs where we have silent bhattis, we have, you know, silent retreats where it's, you know, it's really to go into that depth of silence, and it gives us a mirror, of course, of where we are spiritually, where my intellect's going, if I'm pulled by this or if I'm pulled by that. And of course, these are all things which are normal, but it's like, in a sense of our practice, to go more and more into that state of silence or presence, um, takes a lot of practice and a lot of course. I was listening to something yesterday from someone saying, you know, just with our depth of experience and our time with experience, we learn through that as well. It's not something that it comes straight away. As we know, when, you know, we first have students that come along, or new BKs, and they sit for meditation, and they think, no, I can't do this. This is too hard. How can I sit and do nothing, or just just look at something and observe? And of course, when we do have that experience for even a few seconds, where the mind stops thinking, it's almost like, I think for all of us, that's a huge enlightenment, because you think, wow, there's this silent space which maybe I haven't never even experienced before, or feel I've experienced. Or if it is silent, it's super scary, because sometimes people know that silent thing is like, it's, and I think sometimes, is that the living death? When we say the living death, is that when we go in, sit in that space of silence, because we've died, the ego's died. I'm just left as that state of an observer. And of course, and for many souls, that can be really scary, is initially starting in meditation. And of course, that's sort of like, as BKs, of course, we love that, because we know that, okay, that's silent, that is, you know, that vibration that's created through that. We all know that state when, if we've been around, you know, even someone that's left the body, that, and Baba's mentioned this many times too, when the soul leaves the body, there's this depth of silence, which is really intense. It's like, it's just like, wow, that's like, and of course we say the aspect of dead silence too, you know, when we're saying, okay, let's sit in that space of complete silence or dead silence. And really that is the death of the ego in that sense. And of course, that's the state, you know, that we strive to actually be in, where, and I think sometimes it's like, you know, we have our part, and, you know, interesting, like I was saying, we all have different parts. We know that. I think sometimes for the part with with creative things and all these things, you know, that silence is very much a big part of that, because it's almost like it's a feeling that things are born out of that silence. Creativity comes out of that stillness, out of that ideas, sort of creating things, or an idea how to do something. You know, many times, you know, having the experience of, you know, having a canvas in front and no idea what's going to be painted, but just to start. And as soon as you start, and of course, sitting in that space of silence, you know, you might put one stroke on it and another one on something, and then the thing comes of, okay, this could, you know, this morphs into something which you have no idea when you start, but as soon as you implement that starting, the thing emerges, you know. So it's sometimes with, it's like, I guess, when we speak of something, or if we have something we read, if we read something, we say we got a speech or something and we're not sure what to do. We think, no, I can't just go in there like that. I have to have something in front of me, so I got a reference. But then, you know, when we develop that practice of presence and stillness, then who's doing anyway? You know, as we know, who's doing when we make ourselves available in that stage of, and that's today's Murli too. I saw a bit of today's Avyak Murli where Baba's speaking of, you know, a bit of, okay, when we're instrument, when we're really the instrument, having that experience of just being the instrument, then it's, the I is not there. I'm not doing, Baba's doing. I just have to make myself available in that state of being an instrument. And then, of course, we don't know that, of course, you know, how you know, like Baba says, yes, he's Karan Karavanha, or what was the other? I think the other one's Jani Janaha, but that's like knowing the thoughts. No, I think the thoughts are the mind, but he's saying, okay, he's Karan Karavanha. And if I look at my journey, in this journey of, in BK life of 40 years, I think when I've really had certain different experiences where it's really been obvious that that's been Karan Karavana. Baba has worked through someone or something and given me something right at the precise moment where that will touch the soul in a way where you think, wow, there's some intelligence or some being or some, you know, that knows exactly my part and what I'm doing and what I need for this moment. And of course, when we make ourselves the instrument, that's Baba's role, you know. And of course, the instrument, as we know, is the angel. The angel, and of course, when we're in that stage of the instrument, we're available all the time, and there's all those qualities of which we're learning, the virtues, all that are going to be in automatically in that stage of being the instrument. And of course, I still see it, still come back to that aspect of that as presence, because the instrument also is, we're just the observer. We're sitting in that space of silence. We're not, it's almost like in Baba's eyes, of course, when he sees the drama and all this play out, which is happening now, he doesn't see it as it's good or bad. He just sees it as drama. And of course, we know that in a sense of, you know, in knowledge wise, but then sometimes I think, how much do we really accept that as well? And this is also the part of the instrument as well. When we're the angel or the instrument, it's like we see it like Baba sees it, the drama. We see each soul as they are, that they're just playing their part. There's not the feeling of right or wrong. It's just the soul playing the part. And of course, when there's any conflict comes in, it's always, from my experience, it's always when the I has come into it. I think this, or I think that's not right, or something. There'll be some dialogue in my mind where I'm not accepting that as it is. And of course, in a true sense, if we look at it, you know, okay, you know, we know Baba says, yes, this is a predestined drama. Everything is happening precisely as it's always happened. but mentally, do I accept that? And of course, I can say, and usually what I've observed, many souls will say when something's affected them, and they say, well, okay, drama's drama, like we'll say it in a way where yes, it's a weapon. We say, yes, drama to try to finish that. But if we're affected by that from the initial onset, then it's more of a challenge to descale that, or sort of come back to, okay. And I remember sort of going through experiences here where, that was for many, many years sort of, we see others sometimes of doing things we don't think are right or not appropriate. And sometimes, we might say, yeah, no, that should be addressed. It should be, but then I remember sort of having, this sort of dramas with, and it's usually with relationships and work colleagues, service companions and that, and, going to the seniors and, subtly complaining that this one's doing this and they're not doing that and all that. And as we know, the seniors will listen to all these things and they will sometimes give advice, but most of the time they know that that's the lesson we have to learn, and we have to use knowledge in a sense how to process that. And I remember it wasn't until I got to a point where that was become so obvious that I had expectation that that person should be doing this because I'm this, like in a sense saying, okay, I'm in charge. Shouldn't they be listened to who's in charge? Like that type of mentality. And of course, if they don't, then there's a problem, because you feel, no, they're not doing what I say. And of course, then I realized that it was all the I aspects in that, I'm this. And of course, then I realized, of course, and it was like really that thing of, okay, they're just playing their part. It's their fortune. Why should I be concerned with that? And why should I expect they should do what I say? If I need other help, get other help from somewhere else. So it was really a sort of a grounding in that aspect of soul consciousness, in the sense of, okay, that soul's just playing their part. It's not right or wrong. It's just a part. And of course, drama wise, it was like, okay, that's their fortune and it's nothing new. And so that for me, that experience was like all of a sudden everything just dissolved after that. Actually, there was no problem after that. And I realized it was just my way of thinking of that and not using that. And of course, especially the I and the my and all this, because I looked around and thought, well, no, other departments are like this and this and this, and they have a department in charge. And what I observed at most, if they're a head of department, they were the last person who give the yes or no, In my case, it wasn't like that. Maybe just being a foreigner here, that's something as well. But it wasn't like that at all. And people sometimes would come in and say, "Oh, but aren't you in charge? Can't you tell him to do this?" you know. And of course, I say, "No, it's best you ask." Like you ask them directly. So it was like a different type of situation, but it was like. But of course, I remember going to Dr. Nirmala and sort of saying, this, and she's saying, "No, the person's there. Just deal with it." In a sense of, that's your lesson, and you have to master that through using gyan and yoga, sort of. And of course, when that finally, I realized that in a true sense, I realized, wow, that's it was so simple, and I'd known that all along. We know gyan, we know the knowledge, we can repeat it, but to really be that, and I realized, wow, the seniors, they must get this all the time, where people come and they always say, they always point the other person's the problem, but actually they know that it's not the other person, it's you. It's you coming to them and knowing that you have to learn that story. They're just the instrument playing their part. It's your response to that. And of course, we all know that, but so many times, that's the trickery of Maya, isn't it? Because we always think, not always, but a lot of time it's a feeling that the external thing is the cause of this, which is not really the case, as we know. But of course, that was a big mirror for me. And of course, that led on to this whole. And I used to think, why is it so many spiritual, masters, so to speak, in the Lokic world, and that, many of them speak on this aspect of presence and being here and now. And I mean, it's been around a long time. Of course, in our sense, in Baba's world, in Baba's knowledge, we don't use that terminology a lot, but of course we know that, okay, when we're sitting in silence, in that space of silence, in soul consciousness, in remembrance, that is that space of presence, because we're fully present, we're fully connected in that sense. And of course, I think this is where souls in the Lokic, that space is still there for everyone. I mean, that dead silence is soul world. And of course, everyone's come from soul world, so everyone's had the experience of that. But then in BK sense, of course, we know that, okay, when we sit in that really for a length of time in silence, we're totally energized. It's like that's where we get all our power. Look at Amrit Vela. Why is Amrit Vela so special? Why is it so special? It's special because it's a silent time. It's easier to go in that state of being soul conscious in the present, in silence. And of course, we may not get that physically, of course, in the day. I remember sort of, and probably many of you have probably heard my experience in my early days just before Gyan, where I lived in the forest. It was like the silence in that space was intense. It was like, sometimes they say, silence is deafening also. When it's a level of in the physical silence where there's really, they said to me once when I was out there, and I was in that space in the Kimberley, they say if you're within 20-mile radius of any engine, an engine will affect out to about 20 miles, the sound of any petrol engine. So when you're outside of that radius of that vibration, there's another level of physical silence, which is like really intense, And of course, I spent nearly 1 year in this place, and once a day a plane used to come past, a surveillance plane, coastal surveillance, and I could hear that plane coming for at least 7 miles away. That's how clear this thing was. And of course, I was experiencing there was some being or some intelligence or some in this space of silence, because it was so intense. And of course, that was the start of my journey into Brahman, into BK world. But it was like, it was so intense and so clear that I felt, wow, there's this truth, there's this being in this space of silence that is like all seeing, all knowing. I had those sort of thoughts and feelings at that time, but it was so clear that there was some being in that space. And of course, after that, being inspired to paint and start music from that experience, I always sort of feel, wow, they were gifts from Baba, and they were born out of that really out of that space of silence, sitting in that space of silence. And of course, I had both experiences there. I had experiences there, which was very interesting, in a sense of what pulls us out of that space of presence. Is when I went there, I said, and this was really in the middle of nowhere, like that 1 year, I just had 10 visitors. So 10 people, different people I saw in 1 year. But I remember saying to my parents, because I was 24 years old then, I said to my parents, in those days, you had to go to the phone box and make a phone call. There was no cell phones, this was 82. But I remember saying to them, I'd come back for Christmas to Adelaide, which was like the other side of Australia. It was like, if you drove, it would take you, if you could do it non-stop, it would take you nearly 4.5, 5 days non-stop driving to get from where I lived to my hometown, which you couldn't do it in that anyway. You'd have to take probably a week and a half, something to rest and that on the way. But I'd said to them I'd be back for Christmas. Well, when I went out to this place the second time I was there, and of course, it was coming up to that time of year. And of course, being in this place in the middle of nowhere, I thought, well, it's not so easy to get back. So I end up getting back on a trawler, hitched a ride on a trawler to get back to the mainland. And of course, it was like really like hell to get back. It was like a whole drama to get back. And when I got back, and of course, I made the phone call from that town to my hometown saying I'd come back. And my parents said, no, we weren't expecting you back. And I'd gone through this thing in the mind where I'd said that, and then I thought they were expecting me to come back, and I created this whole huge lot of mire for me then, because it was really difficult to get back from this place. And it was like I said, it was really like hell to get back. We had to come back through a cyclone, and the trawler nearly got smashed on the rocks, in the ocean. It was like I smashed my guitar, all the luggage moving on the trawler, with the huge waves and all that. And then I got back and they said, no, we weren't expecting you back. So I realized, wow, I'd created this whole drama in my mind, which was nothing to do with reality at all, with the reality. And I thought, wow. And of course, attachment, it was attachment to that and to the, and I thought, wow, that was so like intense. And of course, when you're in that space of silence, I realized when I was there, first thing is like, you only have influence with your own thoughts and the nature. That's what you have to deal with. And of course, the nature for me was fine. I mean, you had to be really aware, really present as well, because those visitors that I had in that 1 year, the first thing they say, what do you do out here in the middle of the nature, in the forest like that? And of course, the other thing was like, what happens if you have an accident or you get bitten by a snake or something happens? And I didn't think of that then. I was just so intoxicated being in a place where very few people had ever been, has hardly even touched. And there was this beautiful freshwater spring. And I didn't think like if I had an accident or something. And of course, if you did, it was really Om Shanti, because there's no way you're going to get into town. It's 2 days by boat. You could do that journey twice a month with the right ocean tides. But it was like, there was just that, I guess, knowing, and of course, for my part, in that sense of being there and having that experience, but it was like, it really forced you into being present as well, because that was a natural instinct of survival. Like any other animal, they have to be fully present. If they're not alert or present, there's a lot of predators, like in the food chain of all the animals, you see them even in here, the little galeries, the chipmunks and this and this and this. They're like super, super, super alert, because there's other things that can eat them. And and they have we just have to be that aware. And of course, that was the same experience in that for me in the forest like that, because you had to pay full attention to each step, because there was snakes, there was thorns and thistles and scorpions, all sorts of things. It was all rock. So you had to go, walk rock to rock. So you have to pay full attention. So that was like the start of that. But of course, now in Brahman life at this point now, of course, I think it's the most important thing is to be as much present where we are. And of course, there's always these things of, like, sometimes we think somewhere else is going to be better, or when I get here or when I get there. But no, I think we have to really bring everything back to making the most as we possibly can of this moment. And of course, that's where I see the whole, what we're doing, even in our practice, and that it always has to come back to this present moment. And what am I doing now? Don't sort of wait for tomorrow. And then sometimes I even think waiting, is what is waiting really, sometimes I think, no, I try not to do waiting for something. And that's an interesting experience too, because I think sometimes we put ourselves into situations where we put ourselves into waiting for something or waiting for someone, but that means if we're waiting for something, there's two sides to that too, because you're not using the present moment, you're not using this aspect of presence. It's like, sometimes I feel when you're doing action, if say you put the kettle on, if you're doing waiting, you put the kettle on, you'll stand there waiting for that kettle to boil. And as we know, there's an old saying, you know the worst thing is waiting for something to happen, to finish. And you're actually doing that aspect of waiting, and I don't think anyone likes waiting, really. So it's like, okay, how, if you do something, and then I find, okay, if I do something and then go on and do something else and then come back to that, all of a sudden it's happened, and you haven't actually experienced that experience of waiting for something. And this is where I think when we use the present moment, use the power of the presence, and just being soul conscious with Baba, then there's where does waiting happen? It doesn't happen. You're just enjoying the moment, you're enjoying what's happening, and there's not a feeling of that anxiety or something to happen, or and that's an art as well, I think, because we have to be creative in that as well. Yeah, very interesting. So yeah, the power of presence, the power of presence. And also, it's like, I think this time now, because there's so much happening as well. I mean, we have more information now, and of course, that's one thing which is, some people say it's a distraction, but I think, all the new tools now, with connecting with each other. Look at this now. I mean, look, when the lockdown and the pandemic was here, all this thing, it was like it pushed us into, using the tools we have to communicate, to connect. And of course, we think, yes, that's a wonderful thing, how we can do that. I do believe as time goes on, these things, of course, eventually will finish. We know that. And then, of course, we'll be back to, really basic, like in, when I say old days, but more probably second half of the cycle, when we just have communities, local communities, and our connection with who's next door, our neighbors, and just a bit down the road. But that's all we'll have connection with when all this goes, because obviously when electricity goes, when aspects in drama take place where we don't get power, we don't get internet, then of course we're back to where we are, our neighbors, our people we're around, and that's going to be our world. But whereas now we have this, we have the whole world information, and whether that's real or not, we don't really know. We can, as sometimes I used to be fascinated here in a big campus where something would happen, someone would tell a story, or did you hear about this, or did you hear about that? And you listen to that, and then, you find out, sometime later, that wasn't their situation at all. Somebody heard something wrong or a misinterpretation, and then a story goes out that something's happened, and maybe it's completely different as well. So sometimes I think in those types of situations, it's we have to be very careful too, not to. And I think that's where also, being soul conscious, being in a present, we don't give that too much weight. Stories, we just see, okay, yes, this happened, that happened, but not sort of, be surprised or sort of shocked or something of some story, because that's also, we've already engaged in. When I see that happens with myself, I've already engaged in a interpretation or something of something, someone. I heard it recently. I heard someone say, Brahma Baba's story, when people used to come to Baba, and as we know, in his last days, or his last stage, he was in that state where, people would come into his hut or something, Baba's hut, and he'd be so conscious and in the present, that atmosphere, as we know, when somebody sits in that space, um, if there's any problems, they just dissolve. you know they don't, it's almost like some problem or something, but then his presence would just be such where the problem would disappear. And that's many times it's like that in our own story when we sit in that space of presence. There's no problem actually. It's all created within the mind. So wonderful to share, and I'm not sure the part now whether what we do. Is there like question or something, or yeah, is Sister Ranker there?
Yes, yes, brother, I'm there.
Brother, yes. So
we can invite sharings
so,
and
yeah.
questions. David Bhai, just beautiful. I have spent 30 years of my life, you do not know, with you every time I come, along with Rajesh Bhai. When you spoke of power of presence, I just thought about the power of now by Eckhart Tolle. But I know I've seen your journey. I've, as you rightly said, I didn't remember the place where you built your own house. And I have read those experiences and all. I've read how you predetermined your history. But for me, coming to the Brahmin thing, there are three things which attracted me. I'll come to my most favorite last, the flute. The flute, your music, the audience you created, it was awing. I didn't still understand those bowls of this Tibetan music which you played. And then your angels. And most important, which impressed us is how did you create that lovely eyes of Brahma Baba? I remember the first photograph which came years back, that when otherwise it was the normal Brahma Baba, but that blue background photograph and that lovely eyes of Brahma Baba, it was from you. I think it's so etched in my memory. Wherever we go, we can see Baba looking at us. I think you did that. These are a few things very amazing, and silently, even this time when I visited, I passed you like, like a solitary reaper. I just passed you and saw you. You are amazing. I think I'm so privileged to see your presence, but I just want to know more about these eyes which you created in Brahma Baba. That speaking lovely eyes. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you. Well, I mean, again, I think, I think in the practice of what I see, the arts and doing art and that is, I think when we put that aspect of presence and being really in the present into, and that happens anyway with art, and I think all the arts, when we do that in that space of presence, then that's Baba doing also, so I feel with these paintings, because many people have said that over the years, that, oh, this looks like Baba's looking at you if you go this side of the room, that side of the room. But I think just that, to put yourself in that space, because I would use different yuktis for doing Baba's picture too, and they'd all would be different, but I think really that's Baba's doing that, because that's his part. It's just, again, to make yourself available, being instrument. And I remember sort of early doing Baba's picture, and I used to think, why is it if I'm using, and I'd use a projector, to project the face. The old style was like, you had an opaque projector, you put a photograph on the projector, and then you had the lens and it would project out onto the canvas. So I'd get Baba's picture very accurate as far as the shape of the face, Baba's face. And then I thought, well, it's only a matter of coloring in. Like, okay, you got the shape, you got the lines. But then when I'd started them, I thought, well, no, they're at the end of some of the early ones were like, they were very different. And I'm thinking, why is that? If I'm just copying, why is there so much difference in the copying? So it was obvious I wasn't seeing Baba's picture as it was. I was interpreting it in my own mind where I think light should be and where shadow and more shadow. So it was my manmat that was stopping me seeing what really was on that original photo, where the deeper shadows were, the lighter shadows, the light parts and all this. So then when I started really studying that, like really intensely thinking, where's the lightest, where's the darkest and all this, and I was really, and then I realized this was a quote I'd heard many times when they say, when an artist is able to see something as it is, then they can paint it. Most of the time we just look at something, we don't actually see it. And that was an interesting, like a big change in how the pictures developed from there, because then I realized, wow, that intense observation and awareness and presence in that looking, that was the part that then I was able to copy that, you know, but it was to get to that point where it's almost like you stopped thinking, and you just looked at it and think, okay, observe where that. And of course, I think that's where Baba does his magic. In anyone who does that, it could be sweeping the floor, it could be cooking, it could be doing any task. If we put that power of presence into it, then it becomes an art. And anyone observing that also will be pulled to Baba, because the person will be immersed in that, in so much love and so much like just really enjoying that process of calm yoga, and it will be an art naturally. And of course, as we all know, what is golden age? What are we doing in golden age? We're all artists in golden age, because we have that natural ability to be 100% present in the action we're doing. Naturally, then it's an art. And we see that even now when we see any piece of art, it means the person who's doing that has been fully present. So, yeah, so really, but of course it is Baba that's doing that. And I had really had that experience in Diamond Hall, Baba's picture there, because that happened in such a way where it was really opposite to anything I think I'd ever done, because it was just different. And of course, it was really that experience of that Baba was doing this, I didn't feel I'd done anything at the end of that. And of course, as we know, if we think we've done something, then we're also subject to a fluctuation of up and down, because somebody might say that's beautiful. Somebody might come and say that, oh, I don't like that. And then, of course, we're going to be influenced by that as well. When we're instrument and Baba's doing, then okay, we know some will like, some won't like, but that's fine. I've just been happy to be the instrument to do that. So, yeah, interesting. But thank you. I didn't get all what you had spoken, because my system went off here with the Wi-Fi. But yeah.
You must play the flute for us at the end.
Okay, I have one here too. I have a little. This is a Native American spirit pipe. For some reason, a lot of these are being gifted to me. At least 3 of them, and they're very simple. But somehow I love that, and I love the old, especially with the nature and that, because I had a lot of my experiences come through nature, and in the open, sort of playing music in a outback, and that's very much the Native American flutes were like that. So that somehow they've come to me, different people over the years.
Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, brother.
That was really very interesting and very amazing also, because I really liked that. And what I really feel from my childhood, that if you really be in present, live in present, then only you realize that you are actually a present from Almighty God. And when you realize it, people will also realize that, yes, you are a gift, you are a present of the Almighty God. And in that process, what happens, the total attitude of yours changes, that transformation. And in that process, what happens, that really the transformation takes place. And whatever you do, as you told, that becomes an art. Whatever actually, basically, what happens when you go in deep silence, your creativity part starts. Otherwise, what in turbulence, what happens? You are busy here and there. You are not with yourself. And when you are in deep silence, that space of silence, you are actually with yourself. And then you realize that you are connected to Almighty Baba. And then
Yeah.
you start receiving the energy from Baba. Actually, we all are connected at every time. But as because we are in turbulence, we don't realize it. And when we become in silence, we start realizing that I'm connected to Baba, and we start getting the energy from Baba. As I just always do, you see the word silence, the first letter S, what I feel is for soul conscious state. And when you are in soul conscious state, then another letter I, you start go for introspection rather than inspection. And there starts the inward journey. And in that inward journey, if you are following Srimad, you are lawful. And when you are lawful and following Srimad, you become loveful also. And in that process, another letter E makes you embodiment of knowledge. You become Gyan Sarup and Gyan Murta. And after becoming Gyan Sarup and Gyan Murt, what Brahma Baba was, became the last stage, and another letter L N tells that he became Nirakari, Nirvikari, and Nirahankari. And when you become Nirakari, Nirvikari, and Nirahankari, another letter C, you really feel the care, you really feel the clarity, and the cleansing process starts. And the another letter E, you exit from this world, you exit from this sakar world, and you move into the space of silence which you're talking. And that space of silence is really very beautiful. We all have experienced, maybe for seconds or minutes or for hours. It's number wise that Baba tells. So it's really, if you are in present, see what actually I learned from your lecture and what you learned from your experience, that we have to be in present. Do not drag yourself in past nor in future. Then you will realize that you are a gift for yourself, and you realize that you have got a gift from Almighty Baba, and you also become a present for the world. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you. Wonderful. Beautiful.
Shanti, brother.
So, Om
Good morning.
Shanti. Good
I
morning.
was wondering about the experience that you shared when you mentioned you had gone to Nirmala's sister about it, about to overcome that issue of not able to get some things done. You did come up with that idea when sister said that it's all drama. You have to realize that it's just repeating. Am I right in my understanding? When you talked about relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if such situations ever recur, what has been your practice now, and what are you going to do that you come back to that present moment and solve it out right away?
Well, I think that the aspect of course, drama is very important in this. That past is past. Whatever happened, it's past. And of course, that's easier said than done in a sense, because it all depends on our karmic situation with that particular person or that situation. Because obviously, if there's attachment, if there's aspects of vice in that relationship, on that level of attachment or expectation and all these subtle threads, that will determine how quickly I can put that as past. Naturally, we don't want to, when we learn from that, we realize, okay, we become a bit smarter next time, that I don't get entangled or don't get attached to that situation or that person or that thing. And I think mentally too, when sometimes I see it, because I was a parent just for 6 months. I had a child just before Gyan, and that child left the body literally 2 months before I took Gyan. He was 6 months old. So I had the experience of that relationship, the family, and of course, when we say my child, or this is my son or my daughter. And I've already, I feel myself if I put myself in that mindset, then I've already limited myself to, then if I think that's mine, then I'm already, I'm going to have to work hard to see that as, okay, it's just that soul and that's that soul's part. I have respect for that. All the things of course, in Brahman life, what Baba's saying us to be, I can easily do that easily when I let go of that my aspect and I. And of course, we will have the lessons. We have to have the lessons because that's how we learn. So we just become smarter and smarter as time goes on and experience, because from my experience, if at time I've been really attached to someone in a full sense, and of course it's exactly what Baba says, it's completely Maya, it's like really hell, and a lot of problem, a lot of turmoil, a lot of sorrow, a lot of thing, because if you get so into someone's name and form, attached to someone's name and form, and sort of really into that to the fullest extent, then of course the mire and all that which you go through, and the sorrow is intense, because it's exactly what Baba says. If we get caught into someone's name or form, or into the vices, fully into the vices, then that's the result of that. So if we have that experience, it's like, wow, you become very aware of that, of course, afterwards, because no one wants to experience sorrow. But then if we don't have that experience and we've been freed of that this birth, then we still might have, it be inquisitive or whatever, some interest there. But then, once we're, there's an old saying, once bitten, twice shy, So it's like, if we have that experience and we've gone through it, we think, wow, I knew that before Gyan, because I'd been through, in the West, of course, we're in relationships in teenagers, like you would say in India, marriage. In foreign, relationships, full relationships. And of course, if I look at my own experience, the most sorrow I had was through the vices in those relationships, especially if you're with someone and then they're with someone else, and all the things that go on, sort of this, and of course your heart, and of course when I took Gyan, I realized, wow, they were all the things I experienced. And if I look at my own life, they were also the things that were the most sorrow. So it was like, and I was looking for something more than that. I thought, no, it can't be like this. There must be a way you can live with others and live with someone and have no attachment in this, because I didn't accept that sorrow was a natural part of that process, which I'd always experienced, but I didn't accept that as real. I thought, no, there must be more. And that's what, when I heard this knowledge of, okay, when Baba says, okay, be soul conscious, of course I realized, yes, of course that's it, because, and of course not to get caught or attached to anything or anyone, because my own experience that, yes, that was sorrow, and the biggest sorrow. And of course, a lot of friends just thought that's just normal in relationships. Of course, it's normal for Kali Yuga, but it's not normal as old souls. We've been through many, many lives where we've been free of all that. We've just lived in peace and harmony and all this. And of course, but so it's what we know. Of course, I'm going to expand it on your question of that, but of course, we know that through when we're attached to something, or we expect something from someone or something, and that subtle thread of that's what causes a conflict, rather than just it's drama. This is soul's part, and let me play my part fully. I mean, I know Shivani, in a lot of her talks, she speaks a lot of this, of the situation and my, of course, response to the situation, which is most important, because that's my part. The other is just an instrument to bring up that. That's why sort of a lot of times when we have the finger pointing at the three fingers back, and that's my story, then it's not the other person's story.
Thank you, brother. Yes, I get you.
So, yeah, good.
So
So,
I
All right.
understand
yeah,
that I understood that if it was bound to happen, it would happen, and if it is not bound to, if it is not supposed to happen, it would not happen, and in the time it would take is the right time.
everything is, that's the drama. No, that's the thing we come to, to be on really the rails of drama. We have to accept everything that happens as it is without even a question. Otherwise, if we have a question, it's almost like saying we're not accepting drama as it is. And then we'll have questions, and it depends on the situation, maybe a lot of questions, a lot of confusion. And of course, we're off the rails of drama then. So then that's the Maya then, which comes in. Because it is, yeah, we know knowledge-wise that drama repeats, but then to have the practical experience of the wonder of that and the enjoyment of just being the observer, enjoying the game, and it is just a game, and we're here to learn it. I mean, you see sometimes souls that, don't have a lot of problems with a lot of people, and they think, oh, I've had enough of this, I'm going. So they go somewhere else. And then in a short space of time, they're the same situations back for them. Problems with others, relationships, this and this and this and this. And maybe they go again. They think, no, I've had enough of these people too, so I'm going to another place. And the same thing emerges again. So you can't run away from, we can't run away from what we have to learn. If we have to learn that lesson, we have to process that where we are and go through that. We can't actually remove ourselves from that because, well, in a sense of physically, because if that's the lesson we have to learn, we're going to learn it through anyone. We could be on a desert island and someone's going to roll up, and push our buttons, or test us in something, so I've seen it many times with souls when they have that, when they think it's the other people, and these people have to move themselves away. But then if they have to learn that lesson, then it will come back with another set of people with the same situation. So shall I
Okay,
play a
Brother
little?
David.
Shall I play a little bit of
Yeah, in
music?
the interest
Yeah.
of time, yeah, we would like to complete the session with a music note by yourself.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. It was lovely to share, and thank you for inviting me to the program. Yeah. Hang on, I'll just change this to original sound because that will make it, I think, a bit better.
That was wonderful, brother. Thank you very
Thank,
much for being there. It was a
mm,
wonderful session, and we look forward to having you more often on this program of ours.
thank you. Thank you, Vimesh, is it? Yeah.
Yes, that's
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Vimesh.
Okay, thank you, brother. All
Om
right. Om
Shanti. Have a
Shanti, everyone.
wonderful day. Everyone.